Tonight on Q2, a sky-high shutdown.
It's definitely going to make people explore other options, whether it's, more road trips or postponing trips or canceling trips.
As deadline day looms in Washington, we look at the impacts a possible shutdown could have on the airline industry. And diving into the bond.
So I think we've been very conscious about understanding the impact that this is going to be.
It's not that people don't want to invest in parks, it's that they cannot afford a multi-million-dollar rec center.
As the November election nears, we hear from city council members as opinions remain split on the parks bond. The MTN News starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm David J. Our top story, deadline day looms. The House of Representatives continues to debate several of the 12 appropriations bills needed to fund the government, but a shutdown is looking more and more likely. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he's pushing for a short-term continuing resolution that would temporarily avoid a shutdown, but some Republicans have opposed that proposal. Speaker McCarthy has tried to sweeten this short-term deal by including Republican priorities such as deep spending cuts and tougher border policies. But those additions make it almost impossible to pass the Senate. Meanwhile, the Senate is working on its own continuing resolution, which has broad bipartisan support to keep the government open for the next 6 weeks at current spending levels. President Biden says he does not believe a shutdown is inevitable, but added he didn't know how to avoid it. He warns that a shutdown would impact all Americans, and one of those areas most affected could be air travel. Tonight, Q2's Phil Van Pelt takes us to the Billings Airport to learn what a shutdown would mean for travelers.
The shutdown would be felt all across the country, and while it will have impacts on travel, the airport here in Billings will remain open.
People have been talking to me and asking me, well, what's this going to mean for me? How is this going to affect me?
Mark Dean is in the business of travel. As the owner of Family Fun Scuba and Snorkel in Billings, he says if there's a delay in travel, it can be wide-reaching.
Anything that's related to the people traveling A to B, there's a whole network that spiderwebs out to multiple different businesses.
But those at the Billings Airport say it will be business as usual.
We're not worried because in previous government shutdowns, the stakeholders that we operate with have been very professional and have continued to operate as normal. And so we don't expect to see any impacts to our day-to-day operations of the airport.
Nationwide, there's a shortage of roughly 3,000 air traffic controllers, and a shutdown would mean a delay in hiring, resulting in even more shortages. But Roach says the Billings Airport is fully staffed. The biggest question remains the morale of the workers, who might not see a paycheck.
Even on the human element, asking these people to, go X amount of time without any sort of income while bills stack up. It's not like the bills will stop or the kids stop eating, but just on a personal level, my bigger concerns of the workers themselves.
Spencer Martin is visiting Billings from Salt Lake City and says while he isn't worried now, it could add to already stressful travel plans.
So you add something like this to the mix, especially, the unknown. People fear the unknown, and it just creates not a great situation for people trying to travel.
But for businesses like Dean's that rely on air travel, he says the best thing to do is make the best of the situation.
My knee-jerk thought on that is, oh no. And it's just going to take a lot more preparation and investigation on our part to make sure things are flawless and seamless as we can, or airports that are fully staffed. Those may be the airports we wish to go through versus the ones that are having hard times.
In Billings, Phil Van Pelt, MTN News.
A Dillon man is sentenced to 6 years in prison for assaulting police during the January 6th riots at the U.S. Capitol. Isaac Sturgeon will serve 3 years of his sentence in supervised release. According to court documents, Sturgeon attended former President Trump's Stop the Steal rally and then marched with the crowd to the Capitol. He was captured on police body cam as part of a group that picked up a metal barricade that was shoved into a group of D.C. Metro police officers. Sturgeon was arrested 6 weeks later at JFK Airport. So far, 8 people with ties to Montana have been charged or convicted of alleged crimes during the Capitol riots. As a Republican state senator from Laurel is explaining why he's suing the state of Montana over tax bills, we first told you about that lawsuit filed by Senator Brad Molnar last night. We spoke with him about his allegations. Talk about taxes can often be boring, but State Senator Brad Molnar, a Republican from Laurel, is adamant you need to pay attention to this conversation.
This is the first real pushback on overtaxation of rank-and-file property owners.
On Tuesday, Molnar filed a class action lawsuit against the Department of Revenue, alleging the agency is misinterpreting a state law and in doing so is overcharging Montana property owners on their tax bills to the tune of $80 million.
This should be a nonpartisan issue. Every Montanan, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, should be for the rule of law, especially when it comes to the imposition of taxes.
Matthew Monforton is a former state representative and Molnar's attorney. Their suit says Montana is limited to charging no more than 1/2 the rate of inflation for the prior 3 years and claims Montana has incorrectly interpreted the law since 1989 by allowing itself to bank unused mills, the rate at which property is taxed, to apply in the future when needs arise.
At issue, the Department of Revenue shows that with statutory caps, the mill should be a little under 78.
Molnar says the suit will not impact schools because the legislature is constitutionally bound to fund education. In 1999, the legislature put a cap on the number of mills, which limited property tax increases. In 2001, the legislature passed an act allowing a local government entity to carry forward mills in a subsequent tax year. The suit states that because the DOR has no authority to impose mills, it has no authority to bank mills.
And now what they're saying is they have so many mills and the property values have increased so much that they're now trying to carry forward 17 mills.
MTN reached out to the governor's office and the Department of Revenue for reaction to the lawsuit. Neither would comment, but Governor Gianforte did recently discuss the issue on a statewide radio talk show.
We don't have an option. This was implemented in statute. The 95 mills was established by the court 30 years ago, enacted by the legislation. It has not changed in 30 years. This is how we fund our public schools. We can't defund our public schools.
In addition to the lawsuit, Monforton also proposed a ballot initiative to cap property taxes at 1% of their assessed value. The Montana Supreme Court Tuesday sided with the state's attorney general in blocking that initiative. In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Here's a look at the Stockman Bank weather cam. Let's talk about how things shaped up for us today. Not as warm as yesterday when we were well up into the 80s, but 74 is still 5 degrees warmer than the seasonal average. In the morning was a little bit warmer than we see for typically this time of the year as well. Check out sunset now happening just after 7 o'clock in the evening. Here's how it looks statewide. Temperatures today were in the 50s in western Montana, feeling the impacts of our latest cold front a little bit earlier in the day, then 60s, 70s elsewhere. 80s, how about 80 for you in Cody, 86 Worland, 79 for you in Sheridan, and still in the mid to upper 70s across northeastern Montana. Closer look at the forecast details are just a few minutes away, and there are some changes.
Tonight, the city held its first of several town halls as leaders delivered a presentation and answered the public's questions regarding the Parks and Recreation Bond. That $143 million bond, which is on this November's ballot, would fund a recreational center near Amen Park, along with several park improvements. If it passes, the bond could add $200 a year to a home valued at $400,000. The Director of Parks and Recreation, Mike Pigg, Billings Police Chief Rich St. John, and City Administrator Chris Kukulski all took part in tonight's presentation at the Billings Public Library. We're roughly a month out from voters deciding on that ballot measure. The last time voters were presented with a park initiative was in the 1980s, putting the choice back in the hands of the residents. Tonight, Q2's Andrea Lutz sits down with two on the City Council about the Parks Bond, one for it, one against it.
Do you feel like it's too much?
No, I don't think so. I think we've been very conscious about understanding the impact that this is going to be.
It's not that people don't want to invest in parks, it's that they cannot afford a multi-million-dollar rec center.
A historic ask for Billings. Two entirely different takes.
So I have concerns.
And we need this in Billings.
Council members Tom Rupsis and Jennifer Owens sitting down with me to talk about community need, financial transparency, and how a parks bond intertwines with a looming concern over public safety.
This is not an either or. This this is a both and. We have to invest in all sides of our community. And the fact that we haven't been doing this for the last 20 or 40 years, we actually see manifested in some of our public safety issues.
There is indication that building up our parks infrastructure can be a good preventative measure, but the overwhelming majority of this bond, this $200 million bond, is going to a single rec center.
$85 million of it would go to build a recreation center on the Billings South Side. It's a bone of contention for opponents of the bond, like Owen.
While I would love to see investment in our parks, and in fact, many of us on council tried to separate these so the voters could have a fair choice and discuss parks first and a rec center when it's ready, because it's not ready.
The bond would also provide more than $26 million to improve 5 city parks, $10 million for the South Park pool, which Roopsis says is in dire need of repairs.
We shut South Park Pool down 2 weeks early last year because the equipment malfunctioned or broke. Right? We can't do that. We can't build a rec center and let South Park Pool fail.
And it's not just South Park Pool. An expansion of both North Park and Zimmerman community centers could help the city accommodate more community programs and activities, each also in need of upgrades. Both sides admit that cost is a factor in where they stand. Roopsit saying the time to act is now, considering rising costs.
The master plan for the rec center assumed that it would be built in about 3 years and had that inflation factor built in. We were told this in public meetings in council. So the idea that we haven't thought this through is absurd.
Do you think that maybe this is not the right time to ask taxpayers to dig into their pockets?
The average residential homeowner is going to experience about a 22% increase because of property tax increases. So they're already reeling from the compound impacts of property values and inflation. And then we come to them in this city and ask for more money.
The issue is a lot for Billings taxpayers to consider. In Billings, Andrea Lutz, MTN News.
It's a tough time for cats in Cody right now, as a deadly virus is spreading through litters of kittens, hitting the animal shelter especially hard. Q2's Jackie Coffin takes us into the shelter to learn more.
5-month-old Archer here is one of the cats under observation for possible FIP here at the Park County Animal Shelter.
It makes me very happy that he's coming around the people.
Inside the Park County Animal Shelter, you'll find dozens of cats and a staff of cat lovers.
As any animal lover, it's difficult to deal with, but we keep coming in.
From kittens to cats, a virus is lurking.
This is something that you see once every blue moon. You know, it's very rare.
Feline infectious peritonitis, or FIP, is known in the shelter world, but is a first for the Park County Animal Shelter, which saw the virus come in from a litter of feral kittens at the end of May.
Right now, I know of 22 that have died of FIP.
It cannot spread to humans or other animals, but once a cat contracts the virus, it's fatal.
It's difficult. We, as the first responder and caretaker of the animal, then our personal pets, our personal cats are getting sick. So it's crushing.
The shelter is enacting a series of protocols to control the spread, including halting all intakes and direct adoptions of cats.
This is something that should not cause panic. It's not something we see very often, but when we do see it, we have protocols and procedures in place for this.
Scientists in Colorado are hoping the outbreak in Cody offers a unique opportunity to research FIP.
They're leading research. They have clinical trials going on right now. And so we're really lucky to be part of that message with them and collaborate with them in this way.
To give every cat and kitten a fighting chance, first at health and then at a home.
They need to be loved. They need to be cared for, no matter the circumstance.
In Cody, Jackie Coffin, MTN News.
Still ahead on the MTN 10 o'clock news on Q2. Montana's rural libraries are in danger of losing funding. But as of now, no one is sounding the alarm. We'll hear why next. And in sports, driving towards the title, one senior golfer after 3 straight years on the podium is now hoping for more. We'll hear from our Athlete of the Week.
Like a